Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our March 7th special call board meeting and work session. I'm going to call our meeting to order. We do have a quorum. Can I have a motion to adopt our agenda?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. So first on our agenda, we have Dr. Kim Deckett with who's going to be talking about landed.
Great. Good evening, Mr. Carter, the board, Dr. Freeman, those of you who are here with us in person and those who are joining us from your home. I am so excited to bring to you tonight a new recruitment and retention tool that is going to help to get all of our employees, future and present, into homes. We know that there's a widening wealth gap in our country. We also know that everybody doesn't have access to generational wealth. And one of the key things to home ownership, one of the critical pieces, is being able to come up with that 20% down payment on a home, which can be very challenging for individuals who are working in schools, public health, law enforcement. And so this hopefully is going to be one of those things that can create housing equity for all of our employees and all of our future employees. And I want to thank Mr. Seberg for connecting me, initiating that initial meeting with Landed. And I have joining us via Google Meet, we have Claire Goebel and Tricia Coleman, who are going to share more about Landed and how it works and who can access it.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having us. And thank you so much, Dr. Deckett, for your partnership and for inviting us here. Also, board member Seberg and all of the other Asheville community members we've had an opportunity to meet in the process of getting to know you all. Before I share what we have planned for today, my name is Claire Goebel. I work at Landed, leading our work with new employer partners in the Southeast. I'm based in North Carolina. I'm a few hours away from you all in Rocky Mount and have two colleagues joining me today. So I'll invite them to introduce themselves. Teresa, would you like to join us next?
Of course. Hello, everyone. I'm Teresa Coleman. So working very closely with Claire, I am going to be partnering with Dr. Deckett as we move forward with getting things up and running with Asheville City Schools. And primarily, I'll be working with getting things launched, and then on an ongoing basis, I'll be working very closely with Dr. Deckett in order to provide information in terms of how the partnership is progressing, how many homeowners are utilizing the program, and we divide that information over several different things. So really making sure that you all have the data that you need in order to know really that the partnership is up and running and it's working well. So we're very excited to be partnering with you. I'll go ahead and let Ian do a quick introduction.
Hi, Ian Magruder. I help lead our employer partner work nationally, helping get new school districts, hospitals, universities, and local governments up and running on our program. And it's worked really well in other high-cost metro areas. And we're just thrilled that Asheville will be our first partners here in North Carolina.
All right, thank you. So we were invited today just to share a bit of an overview of what we're up to and to answer any questions about how we're going to work together. So with that, we've prepared a few slides. The board was able to receive these in advance, so I'll talk through some of the details, and then we mostly want to open this up to conversation with you all. So I will share my screen now. Are you able to see this all right?
Yes.
Yes, super. Okay. So here at Landed, we help essential professionals buy homes. These are photos of some of the amazing people we work with across the country. And we really got started looking at this from a perspective of teacher housing and how challenging that was in the San Francisco Bay Area. But like Dr. Deckett alluded to, this is becoming more and more the situation in lots of cities across the country. So in the last 6 years, we've partnered with over 300 institutions the large majority of which are in K-12, including some of the major public school districts that you'll see here. And we've worked with them to help their staff, including educators, but also all other staff within the district, to be able to access new pathways to homeownership in the community that they serve. We're excited about this. My background is actually in education, and obviously this is good for staff. It's also good for students and families and communities to have that proximity. So this is just a little bit of a snapshot into a somewhat nearby example. In DC, we've worked with DC public schools for the last 2 or so years. And you'll see here, our initial partnership with DC public schools soon expanded then to all DC government employees. Mayor Bowser became so excited about our work, given its success in primarily housing, again, educators and DC public schools staff. And to date, we've supported now 44 closed home buyers in the district, which is no small feat. The process for this is long. Many times we're meeting people who are interested in learning more about the journey, and it might take them several years to become ready to put offers in on homes. We're able to support anyone at any level of readiness. And ultimately, we're working now with thousands of people who are employed by DC government. And this just gives you a little breakdown on the demographics within that particular employer institution. You'll see here as well a quote from the Deputy Mayor, John Falchicchio, about why this partnership is important to the district and to the mayor. And similar to all, they're thinking a lot about issues of generational wealth and closing the wealth gap, also about employee retention and recruitment. So we'll touch on some of those themes today, but wanted to just start by sharing how this looks a little bit down the road. Finally, here's an example of one of the home buyers we worked with in DC. And what touches me most about this particular story, we've written now at least over 50 stories. If you go to our website, you can learn all about the amazing people we work with. In this case, Mr. Alvarado, who is a high school biology teacher, not only was able to purchase a home near the school where he teaches, but also in the community where he grew up. So from here, I'll get into what it is that we do that helps make this happen. So Landed has a down payment program that helps essential professionals who are really saving for homeownership. Maybe they're making enough again to be paying that monthly rent, but not enough to save at the rate that is necessary as the housing market increases rapidly in the different high cost metro areas where we work. So again, one path is for someone to spend many years saving, all the while home prices are escalating. Another path, and one that we see with many educators and essential professionals, is that they're taking out costly private mortgage insurance. They're spending a lot more money each month just to be able to buy a home. They're having trouble even making competitive offers because they're not making that 20% down payment, or they're buying much further away, which often then shifts their decision again around where they teach or work. So this is where we come in. We see the down payment being the biggest barrier and the opportunity for us to be a helpful partner. We work with home buyers to help them meet that 20% required down payment, and we can provide up to $120,000 right up front to do so, or maximum 15% of the down payment, whichever comes first, to really help them be able to make that competitive offer and become a homeowner near, again, the school where they work. So this is not a loan. There are no monthly payments. It is a shared investment. I'll get into some of the quick mechanics of that. And here's just a good example. So in most cases, we're helping people with around half of the down payment. If you take the example of a $500,000 home, someone typically is not sitting around with $100,000 in the bank, and that is where we come in. So we would help with $50,000. The homeowner would contribute $50,000. And then in exchange for that amount, we would share in 25% of the appreciation or depreciation. So not total value of the home, but as the home either grows in value over time or loses value over time, which we hope and do not think will happen, that is how we kind of exchange on the back end the way to recoup that initial investment in the down payment. This all happens through the Landed Fund, which is a separate organization from the one that Ian, Teresa, and I work for, and is in fact designated by Fannie Mae as a nonprofit through their Community Seconds program. And so what I love about this is that home buyers get to then choose when and how they want to exit the partnership. We've supported over 1,000 home purchases across the country now and have had nearly 150 exits. The vast majority of those have been through refinancing. So what will happen is the homeowner is paying money each month into their mortgage. They're building equity in the home. They pull some of that out. They buy landed out of the partnership. They own the home outright. And it is in their best interest to do so when they feel financially ready. It's in our best interest as well, because we want to use those funds from the landed fund to be able to support future educators and school staff. So it's a win-win situation. They have up to 30 years to do this. And that's a bit about the down payment program. I would be remiss, though, to not mention all the other great supports that we offer. So really, for anyone who is an employee of Asheville City Schools at over 20 plus hours a week, we're able to work with them, whether they're looking at a condo, an apartment, a single family home, all the way up to a duplex. And we offer all sorts of free home buyer coaching and services that really make this a holistically helpful process, I think, for our home buyers. So in fact, 80% of our home buyers take advantage of some percent of that down payment support. 20% just work with us because they're able to connect with amazing real estate agents who are based in the community that they're looking to buy a home in. They get access to a free home buyer coach, all sorts of home buyer education, coaching around financial readiness, and then all the way through the process of making these active offers, even at the very end, free property reviews. So it's a small point, but helpful to note because, again, we don't want someone to be getting into a home that they then couldn't afford to upkeep or renovate, and the property review can help spot that. So this is a bit of a snapshot on all of the services and ways that we partner with the home buyer. And in the long run, what's exciting to us is, again, it's helping them get in the door, build financial security near where they work. And what we're talking about today is it's helpful for recruitment and retention. So when we think about issues facing turnover of staff, employees not feeling financially well because their, again, monthly payment of their rent is skyrocketing, the opportunity for us is to come in and support with that home ownership near where they work, and to do so in a way that helps them stay in their jobs and is meaningfully impactful on employee retention and on also diversity and other ways that we're really excited about supporting Asheville City Schools. So I'm breezing through this, but here are just a few points on how we've supported homebuyer retention in staying in the roles that they work in the district. And then a quick list of some of the other organizations that we partner with. So as for a partnership itself, we've designed this, again, to be very simple for the district to implement. We consider a partnership launched when the school district sends an email to employees saying, if you're interested in Landed, here are some resource links to learn more. But we've also developed all sorts of other materials that we've been talking about with Dr. Deckent that can support recruitment and upcoming recruitment activities, retention, employee financial wellness. So again, we're excited here to serve as a partner in many other ways, not just through this standalone launch email. There's no cost to participating. There's no legal or financial or contractual obligation. So I'm supporting kind of the front end of these conversations. I'll invite Tarisha back in here, who then would lead this partnership long-term with the district and be your counterpart. Tarisha, do you want to share a little bit about what we do post-launch?
Mentioning just a few minutes ago, we consider it launched once that email goes out. From there, employees are invited to attend info sessions that will be hosted by Landed. It's a good opportunity for employees to just learn more about the programs and the services that we provide, be it if they're interested in the down payment support program that we offer, or if they're just solely interested in home buying. But our relationship managers will walk them through the different options that they're available through Landed. Talk to them if they have, it's in a forum where it's a question and answer period. That's a part of that. If they have any questions that they're comfortable asking in the group, they're welcome to do so. But then from there, they typically will schedule a one-on-one consultation where they'll link with someone directly from our team and talk more about their specific situation. And then as they're ready to move forward, as Claire has mentioned, it can be very quickly for those that are already in a position financially ready, have some savings and are ready to quickly move through the program. or it can be more long-term. For some, it may take years to be ready or be in a position to purchase a home. Either way, we're there to assist them and to support them whatever path of their journey they're on. From an employer standpoint, I will work very closely with Dr. DeChant to make sure that we're being viewed as a valued partner and doing what we can to increase or enhance our partnership. So really, there's different channels that we can do that. Our biggest thing is to be there as a resource and a tool for you for recruitment and retention. We do have some different channels that we've partnered with our partners with, be it career fairs, if you have those, newsletters where maybe information continues to be shared. Occasionally, we may have other asks to send out more emails just to make sure that Landed is staying out there as top of mind as a resource that's available to employees. And then on an ongoing basis, really making sure that we're sharing useful data and information to you so that it can be shared within your organization to keep a pulse or to have something to speak to and say, these are the people that we're helping. This is what the program is doing for us. So really just doing what we can to partner with you and to share data and information and be an available tool that you can use to help hopefully increase retention and recruiting and retention.
So we're really looking forward to working with you all. Again, this is just such an honor to be here today, and we're excited to answer your questions. But as we see it, the next step here is Dr. Deckent has arranged to share this news with all eligible employees. So again, anyone who works for Asheville City Schools at 20 plus hours a week. There are no income or asset requirements. We're looking forward to doing this tomorrow. So I'll open it up to questions. I'll stop my screen share. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Claire. Does anyone have any questions? Martha and I had the opportunity to speak with Claire before, and this is a wonderful opportunity, and thank you, George, for bringing this to the attention as well. Anyone have any questions or comments? Gene?
I just think it's a great program, and I wish it was here 30 years ago. Do you have any stats clear on how many of past participants have refinanced their home?
I'll look into that. I know, again, that we've helped 1,000 people buy homes, and we've had already over 150 exits. The vast majority have been through refinancing. A sale would also trigger the exit of the partnership, but the majority of people, when they buy the home near where they work, they want to stay in it, and we're excited to support them to do that.
Yeah, I was wondering, with the refinancing, usually, well, I don't know if it's usually, many times when you refinance, you're getting some equity out of the home, not necessarily, the full extent of that equity. If someone refinances, do they have to pull at least out what your investment is? Do you understand? Am I confusing you?
No, with the refinance process, I should mention, this all happens through a third-party appraisal.
Right.
And it's, again, the home buyer's choice when they want to do that. They might also get an inheritance, or they might save enough to just buy Landed out of the partnership. So they don't have to use this mechanism. But if they choose to do so, it wouldn't be fair if Landed helped appraise the value of the home. So it happens through a third party.
I get that.
Mm-hmm.
I just didn't, the percentage that Landed gets once you refinance or exit the program, that's a fixed amount. So if you ever refinance, you have to make sure that you get at least that much equity of it to pay Landed back. Is that correct? Or am I confused?
You could do so through the refinance, or again, you could pull some money out through the refinance, combine that with other savings and buy Landed out of the partnership. So it doesn't necessarily, it's not required that it happens all through the refinance.
Thank you. This is this is wonderful.
Great, I'm so glad to hear that.
Claire, it's George.
Hi.
So thinking about, this is one thing in a toolbox of recruitment and retention for our teachers. Is there data for how it can affect our students, having teachers who are here, hopefully, those who take advantage of the program staying. Do we have data? It might not be through Landed, but do we have data about how that recruitment and retention of teachers impacts students, since we want to make sure we're focusing on them?
Yeah. Actually, in our 2020 impact report, we did a deep dive on this and have pulled in some data around how higher staff turnover tends to result in less experienced educators, which again is not always not good for the student, but we were able to pull together some kind of interesting points that I'd love to share with the group around just how this is good, again, with the impact group of students as well as the impact group of communities. I would say another piece here, the cost of turnover to the district is significant, as much as $22,000 per teacher from what we found in that impact report. So that's not necessarily speaking directly to your question about students, though in some ways it is, because that pulls resources that could otherwise be allocated to student learning needs or wherever else in the district to, again, constantly recruiting or working to retain teachers. Turnover is especially difficult to manage in math and English language arts. And so, again, we see this being positive for students in those downstream impacts as well. But I'll follow up with our 2020 impact report and share more there.
Any other questions for Claire or Dr. Deckett?
I'll just say one more thing, since I'm the one who
Go ahead.
connected. So I just want to reiterate that this is not a silver bullet, right? But that this is significant for our educators, especially as Dr. Deckett and Dr. Dickerson work on recruitment and retention of our teachers. This doesn't speak to the fact that we know teacher salaries, and that's a General Assembly thing that we want to continue to push. We know that the city needs to continue to work on affordable housing, but this is one tool in the toolbox to show our teachers that we're supporting them.
Oh, teachers and actually all
Yeah.
staff. Yeah, definitely.
All staff, yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. We're excited to be another helpful tool, and we've just really appreciated the opportunity to learn about all of the great work happening in Asheville around affordable housing and changing policy, building new housing. For us, we're looking at the existing stock. How do we help Asheville City Schools staff get into that sooner than later as costs continue to rise? But so many things are needed. This is a very much multidimensional challenge. So honored to be able to be a helpful partner.
Wonderful. Well, if there's no other questions, thank you so much, Claire and your team, for joining us today. We really appreciate it. And I know Dr. Deckett is looking forward to getting this out as soon as possible. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you. You have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye.
And I will say, the email will go out in the morning to all Asheville City Schools employees about the information sessions. And I think we all will agree that we look forward to coming together and supporting the first person who purchases a new home through Landon and being there to rally around that employee. So thank you for your support, and give it over to April.
So, Kim, should we have you going around to, I'm afraid if we just send an email, people are not going to see the significance of this. I'm just sitting here figuring in some different scenarios, and this is really, from what I see here, this is really a great deal. I'm not so sure if we shouldn't be around in some of these staff meetings to really talk about this. I'm really afraid people aren't going to get the significance if they don't hear it from somebody here.
So that, great point, and I can get with Teresa, and we can, if she can't join me face to face, she can definitely join me via Zoom, and I can set up a time with all the principals to come to one of their staff meetings and have Teresa join us and share how the program works and all the advantages.
Because if I'm reading this right, basically you can have a 5% down payment. They will go up to 15%. And so in turn, you get a 20% down payment. The return to Landed, if you sell, is a little higher, I presume, than if you did a 10-10 split. But this is, especially in a place like this where property values, this is a really great thing.
Yes.
that I think we need to really push on staff to understand what this is about. And
Yeah.
especially since they don't have to do it in the city of Asheville.
No, and that's the other thing. I know I'm way over my time. That's the other thing I want to share is that it doesn't have to, when we met with Claire, she shared with us that you can purchase a home. The way they've looked at our boundaries, all the way to essentially Waynesville, Old Fort, Hendersonville, and Weaverville. So it does put all of our employees in a position to be able to purchase an affordable home in our surrounding area.
So can I ask one more question? So can you go with Landon if you already have a home and want to refinance?
Good question.
Because you can really, I'm telling you, would be great for somebody's pocketbook.
So you do not have to be a first-time homeowner to take advantage of Landon. So it is open to anybody to partner
I
with
mean,
you.
for example, you have a house that's 100,000, which we know none of that's around here.
Right.
But you refinance and go with Landon, you put 50 in it, and you keep 20, let's just say it's 70,000. You could have the house paid for plus have money in your pocket.
And invest that money. Or put it towards your retirement plan or something. But yes, there's lots of, there are lots of financial ways to definitely benefit an employee,
That's why I think we have to be out talking about this, because I don't think people are going to get it unless they have somebody to actually sit down and talk with them about it.
yes.
And you need to go because you're the one that understands.
George, good for you. This is great.
Perfect. Any other questions, comments? Let us know what we can do to help.
All right, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, next we have our COVID-19 update with April Dockery and Dr. Freeman.
Good evening, Board. Thank you, Chairman Carter and Dr. Freeman, for giving me another opportunity to give you an update on our COVID-19 protocol and our next phase in our response to COVID-19 in our community. For our families and staff, the toolkit was updated on Friday. It went into effect today. The biggest thing that came about in this toolkit is that voluntary face coverings was suggested. They do ask us to monitor our impact of COVID-19 in our community. They still encourage us to support vaccinations and participate in testing programs, which we do in Asheville City Schools. This past week, I shared with families and staff our current COVID numbers and the impact of COVID-19. I just want to take a moment and show you kind of a snapshot of our data and what it looks like over time. When we first came back from winter break, we had 109 positive cases. We quickly went to 33. These aren't week to week, by the way. They're kind of a couple weeks in between. By February the 2nd, we were down to 33, and last week we had 4 confirmed positives in our schools, which is a dramatic decrease. We're very pleased to see that number. I do want to point out that on February 16th, we reported to our families that we had 80 students that were excluded. That was a miscount. We missed 12. We had to close a pre-K class, and the data was not correctly entered, and so we just missed that we coded it 1X instead of 1D. That was a clerical error, but we have corrected it as far as our historical data. Any question about these trends so far?
With the students that were excluded, when you're saying excluded, that means they had to stay out at least a day, or?
So on the January 12th, it was either because they tested positive, they were out for 10 days, or they were a close contact. They could have been out to 14. Over time, you remember that I shared with you that those times changed. If you tested positive or if you were a close contact, it was down to 5. And then just recently, it was close contacts are not to be excluded. And people who test positive need to be excluded for 5 days, but have to wear a mask for 10. And that is still true. Does that answer your question, Mr. Carter?
Yes, thank you.
So this is our count total. Since we started counting these, August the 23rd, we've had 537 positive cases in Asheville City Schools of staff and students. I do want to take some time and just kind of dig into this a little bit. I know lots of families have a lot of questions about this. The toolkit that I just mentioned, it does encourage school systems to go to voluntary mask in areas where it's a low or medium transmission rate. Schools are encouraged to allow optional face coverings, and we are asked to promote the importance of vaccinations and boosters. The CDC also updated their protocols in February, which included that masks are no longer required for our transportation system. Any questions about that? Oh, the one more thing I want to point out, I'm sorry, before you do that. Community levels also changed. It went from transmission rate to community levels. So it's the 4, and now it's down to the 3, the low, medium, and high. And that is tracked by the CDC and our local health department.
Within the toolkit, does it give a recommendation on masking? Like, say I test positive, I stay out the 5 days, I come back to school. Do I wear a mask when I come back to school? Does it have that in the
Yes, sir.
toolkit?
You wear a mask through day 10.
Okay.
Through day 10.
Perfect.
Any questions about this? And we have shared this with families and you before. I just wanted to make sure I gave you an opportunity to ask me questions. We are recommending that we have face coverings become optional for our staff and students when Buncombe County is in a medium or low community level. That is true for our county right now, and we are very excited about that. We recommend that staff and students who have underlying health conditions still continue to wear face coverings. We also ask that we preserve the ability to require universal face coverings for staff and students when it's deemed necessary by our local health care providers or our health officials in circumstances of a high community levels that directly impact our students and staff. And I have spent a lot of time, I just want to say really quickly, April Bauer with MAHEC, Stacy Saunders with the Buncombe County Health Department, our numerous public health officials have been amazingly supportive and answer the phone when we call and have worked through this with us.
So I think basically what you're saying is that the suggestion is that we go to optional with the understanding that should there be an outbreak or if there should be a rise in our community.
If the transmission rate is high in our community, and we know because our public health officials have told us that it's impacting our staff and students,
Okay.
then we would like to have the ability to go back to having face coverings be required.
Okay. And when you say optional, optional means that you may choose to wear a mask or you may choose not to, except for those individuals who have an underlying condition or something of that sort. Is that correct?
What I mean is we're not requiring our staff and students to wear a mask or face covering.
Okay. All right. So we're not
voluntary.
requiring them to.
Yes.
But it's their choice should they choose
Yes,
to wear
ma'am.
the mask. Okay.
There are a couple things I would like for you to consider. I wanted just to put this in front of you. Some of our students and staff are going to continue to wear masks, and some are just going to choose not to. We will be supportive and respectful of their decisions. We will not be responsible for monitoring face coverings. So I just want to make that really clear. The only time we will step in is when we know we have a student or staff member who is returning from that 5 to 10 day mark, and just make sure they have the supports in place to wear their face coverings properly. We also know that many of our staff and students are going to have some increased anxiety if it becomes optional, if that's something that you decide to do. But we have offered layered mitigation strategies. We've increased our ventilation system. If you remember, we did put air purifying systems. We were able to open up in classrooms we can't open windows. Our schools have done a great job being able to go outside, the outdoor learning spaces we've created. We're still continuing to physical distance as much as possible. And we do offer, and we will continue to offer through the rest of the school year at least, rapid antigen testing.
So I have another question. And this kind of bleeds into the next thing on my list here. Senate Bill 654, is that null and void now? Or do we have to vote on this every month again?
So, Mr. Chairman, the law is still that the board must vote on its face covering policies each month. So the only thing that has changed is the CDC guidance but you still have to vote each and every month. The other thing, just to clarify so there's no confusion after the fact, when Ms. Dockery was mentioning the requirement of wearing a mask on day 6 through 10 after a positive test or after having symptoms, after you're no longer have a fever, that is a legally required control measure. So folks who test positive, once their symptoms subside, when they come back to school day 6 through 10, and it's all outlined on pages 12 and 13 in the toolkit, but that is a legally required control measure. So there will be times that students are required by law to wear a mask in those circumstances. And the CDC also retracted the order on school buses.
Right.
So there's no order on school buses, school transportation nationwide as of, I think, Friday or the week before Friday, actually.
Unless you get sick and you're coming back to school.
Yes, sir.
You would still have to wear it on the bus and in the school setting as well?
Yes.
Okay.
And you actually don't come back to school until day 6 if you test positive, unless you get a negative test. Again, it's all outlined in detail in the toolkit. But when you come back on day 6, you continue to wear a mask days 6 through 10.
Shonda? Y'all, I see people pushing at the thing, so I didn't know if you had it or.
What's the reporting requirement for a positive case with a student? Like, how would the school be notified?
Parents self-report, and staff self-report. Of course, we do, again, offer testing. Majority of it is on-campus testing, just because of the way we have it set up. We do have the reporting form that goes out to families. Every Friday, postcards went home, so people could do the QR code and just let us know. And our COVID coordinators work with them. We do not, I think the question that you were asking me is, do we go in the county tracker and look for our staff and students? And we do not. This volume is just too high. We don't have privy to that.
So how will we change our cleaning and protocols if we go to optional, considering everyone's having staff shortages and whatnot, and considering the numbers would be low because of the home test being so readily available? You wouldn't necessarily see them, and people would be asymptomatic, may not be coming with symptoms.
So the science has shifted, and it is airborne, so it comes through. So it's the wet molecules, which is why the face coverings have been so important. So there isn't going to be a stricter cleaning protocol. We have no plans to change that, but I can share that with the maintenance department and ask for some more detail.
Okay.
But we do not, just like in the beginning of the pandemic, if you remember when we were like fumigating and going through, we don't do that because the science has shifted behind that, where that's not necessary. And I can't remember, Mr. Campbell, since you were so good at the page number. Do you remember the page number? The cleaning protocols?
I do not. I'd have to look at it myself.
I will find it.
Still a lengthy document.
I'll find it for you, Shonda, and send it to you.
Do you have an overall idea of how the staff feel about the mask?
I do not. I just had, it's hard to be a parent in this school system and someone who's been here for a long time, so I have a lot of people who share opinions with me either way. But from the very beginning, we have followed the guidance of our public health officials in the state health department, our local health department, and the CDC. I think most people trust that. But there is, again, I know there's some increased anxiety for many people, and we will support them to the best of our ability. And we have also ordered KN95s. I know that the board knows that as well, for staff and students who are worried about that.
I know we've gotten, over the last couple of days, the board has received emails. Actually, this afternoon, we received emails from staff, actually. So I think we've heard from a good number of people who want to say something about it, I think. I know I've been talking to individuals personally as well. When would you want this to start?
That is ultimately the board's decision.
Now, I'm putting this back on y'all. When do you want this to
I
start?
would think by next Monday,
Okay.
that gives people time to get in touch or talk to you folks or us about it.
Okay.
I mean, one more week is not going to be a bad thing.
No.
Do we have a sense, I know that based on the number of emails that we as a board have received, do we have a sense of those districts that have lifted mandates? Has there been any or many districts that have had a spike in cases since making their mask optional?
we only have the information that's provided to us, so I don't have that exact. Most of the things that have been shared with me is, make sure that your families feel supported, have a plan in place for staff that are a little bit anxious about it, like the KN95s, making sure we had that, and making sure that families understand that staff aren't responsible for making sure that your child wear a mask because you told them to. But no, sir, I don't have that. I just know what our community transmission rates are and what it has been, and we are in a much larger county, and they have still remained low. I do also want to add that we have a tremendously high vaccination rate in Buncombe County compared to other counties in North Carolina, so that's another thing going for us. And I didn't mean to be disrespectful, Mr. Carter. I apologize if it came across that way, but I do think that it is really important to stay aligned with our public health officials. We have trusted them this time. That is their lane. That's what they've suggested. I spent lots of hours talking to them. I think they were a little bit thrown off by the CDC's quick shift, but they are abiding by it, and that is their recommendation.
And I know that, and no, you're perfectly fine. I know that we've had lots of parents over and over and over again asking us to follow the science and listen to science, and I think we've done a great job of that in our district, and we continue to do that. And I know, looking at just anecdotally at other counties around us, I'm in those counties a lot, and seeing other counties that have gone mask optional, I've not seen high transmission rates. We're all in the same mid. There's not many lows in the west, but there's a lot of mid. A lot of them are in the middle or mid, and I think that's, as we've seen the mask optional go to different districts, we can kind of get a barometer of that. By looking at the new data, so, but no, you're fine, thank you. So the recommendation then would be to start on the 14th. So the 14th would be our first day with optional mask if the board decides to go that way.
With the understanding that if there is an increase or if anything else should arise, we have the option of going back to mask required.
I'm asking that.
April and I have talked about this. If we have a huge outbreak,
Right.
I wouldn't wait until a board meeting to say we better put these masks back on.
No, that's what I'm saying. Somebody would have the opportunity to,
The administration.
Yes.
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 You would just, as part of the motion, delegate that to the superintendent and the administration.
It's
That's all
part
we
of
have to
your
do.
motion as well. Board, can y'all please also decide if this will include all educational settings, including our school buses, as part of your motion?
School buses are already taken
They're already
care of.
in.
Right, I just
Okay.
would like it specifically mentioned.
Okay, yeah.
Well, I just think we say we're not delineating any spaces that are public school setting. I wouldn't get into specifics about this area or that area. I would say the whole school district. The buses are the school district.
Well, and per CDC guidelines, it's no longer, that's what it is. It's per CDC guidelines, there's no longer required on public conveyances, so.
Can we gain any anecdotal information about the school districts that have gone mask optional and what the rate of mask usage is with those districts? Because one thing that is concerning to me is the requirement that somebody wear a mask after they test positive. I think that's communicating a lot of personal health information if you've just got one kid there wearing a mask. So I'd want to make sure that if we went mask optional, does that make any sense?
It does make sense. I think, though, we're going to still have kids who are wearing masks no matter what. We're going to have teachers who are wearing masks no matter what. So I don't think we would be outing anyone that would require them personally. That's my personal opinion. I don't know what the rest of you think, but I know watching the Buncombe County meeting, Dr. Baldwin was very direct in saying that everyone's respected on what they do. If they want to wear a mask, they can. If they don't want to wear a mask, they don't have to. So yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, April, I appreciate you putting that in your recommendations, that yes, similar to the arguments at the beginning of the pandemic, that it's everyone's individual choice. If we do decide to make this optional, it is everyone's individual choice whether or not they want to wear a mask. And if, forgive me for saying it this way, but I hope we don't have a Ron DeSantis moment in one of our schools where students who are choosing to remain in masks are therefore picked on, or vice versa. So I appreciate you stating that up there. And I appreciate the work you've done throughout this. Like, it has been it's overused, but this unprecedented situation we're in, and you have handled it really well. You have put together the facts very clearly every single time we've met, your weekly stuff going out. So I really appreciate that. I still am on the fence. I'll be honest. I'm just, because I know that we have schools that are understaffed. And if all of a sudden, we're spiked and we have to close schools, that concerns me. But I'm just curious with the board, like, I'm not saying that we have to keep masks on, but I'm just curious, you've shared very clearly your thinking, but I'd love to hear from the board, like, what do we think? I mean, I get it. It's been 2 years and people are tired and we're seeing cases go down and lots of evidence points to not wearing masks, but, so I'm just curious what.
Before, just really quick, I just want to say, at no point did anyone say that the pandemic is over or that we're going to normal. We are just, public health has said that we are shifting our approach. And this is the next phase in the pandemic. Doesn't mean it's over. Doesn't mean we might not have to pivot. But right now in this moment, thank you.
Shonda?
I think it's difficult for me without hearing from staff, because they're the ones that are in there with the larger number of kids. I know in the after-school programs, with housing authority, they're requiring them to continue wearing masks regardless of what the school does. So people are a little anxious, but it's difficult for me to decide either way without knowing what the people that are in there with kids feel.
I've heard some teachers, talk about how frustrating it was at the beginning of the year trying to get kids to stay in mass, and then that's become increasingly harder as we get into the spring. So I do worry about that if we decide to keep the masks mandate, like what, to add yet more on top of those teachers who are like still, having those battles every day. But you're right, Sean, to not have a full spectrum of, I don't know, again.
Martha?
Well, I guess I'm going to be the bad guy here. I think it's interesting that when you walk out of a school building, you can get on a bus and you don't have to wear a mask. If you go out in the community, there are very few people wearing masks. You go to the grocery store, there are very few people wearing masks. And, there's never going to be 100% consensus on anything. I think we need to follow the CDC guidelines. I very strongly feel that way. I also know that inherent in what we're talking about doing is the opportunity to, if we need to, go back to everyone wears the mask. I know we've had quite a few letters from doctors in the community, all of whom have asked us to please remove the mask, that the guidance has said, it's time to do that. I'm old, and I have to be really careful. I have asked my personal physician about masking, and as he says, if you have been boosted, if you are careful, it is time for us to begin to move forward. So for me, mask optional. If you want to wear a mask, wear it. If you don't want to wear a mask, you don't have to. I don't see that as targeting anyone, although I totally, Peyton, understand what you were saying about that. I can see that that could be an issue at some point. I think it's time for mask optional. That's what I think.
Hayden?
My biggest concern is we've come this far and we're this close to the end of a school year. And if we have to mask everybody back up, I don't know how responsive folks are going to be. So I'm on the fence right now.
I guess that leaves me. I personally, I agree with Martha. I mean, in my day-to-day job, I'm out in the community a lot. I think that I agree with April. We do have high vaccination rates amongst our students and within Asheville City Schools, our students and our staff. We have a different variant, It's not it's not Delta anymore, it's Omicron, which is has had less effect than the Delta did. Once Buncombe County let their mask mandate expire, I think that definitely put a lot more pressure. It's almost like the Wild West outside when you go into stores, restaurants, whatever these days. I personally am for going to mask optional. By giving a window of time before this goes into effect, this would also give opportunity for parents, if they want to get their kids vaccinated, or boosted if they haven't gotten a booster yet. So by not making this effective tomorrow, this does give time. It also gives time for staff. Again, no one is going to be shamed or ridiculed or done anything if they wear a mask or if they're not wearing a mask. It goes both ways on this one. So if you're not wearing a mask, you shouldn't be. Everyone should be respected. So I am, again, for going mask optional. I trust our health department. I trust April. I trust our doctors. I think it's time. I can't stand wearing a mask, but I do it every day for my job as well. And even my job has now dropped it. I would be more apt to say, yes, let's drop it if we could ask everyone their vaccination status, but I'm not going to get into that. So everyone's had their say.
So James, if you don't mind, I know that we
No, you're fine.
have things to move on to, but I think this is important. And I just want to say that what just happened here is what I'd love to see in a board meeting. Because I truly have come in here not quite sure, and to be able to talk back and forth, have this conversation is really helpful to me, as opposed to having to sit right here and just kind of think, right? And so, yeah, it's a weighted decision. So I appreciate everyone putting in their voice and being able to kind of just converse back and forth to figure it out. So thank you.
Thank you. All right. Do you have anything else? All right. So this is an action item on our agenda.
Wait a minute, I got something.
All right. Martha's got something else.
Just one more time. The recommendation from you and from
District leadership.
yes, the recommendation is mask optional.
Voluntary masking for pre-K-12. For
Okay.
staff and students on all of our campuses, including our buses.
Okay. Thank you.
With the option to let the administration to decide if we need to mask, and that's also following CDC guidelines. If Buncombe County goes to a high, we're all masking anyway. Yes?
No.
No? Okay.
It is if it directly impacts our staff and students. Buncombe County could go high if it was an isolated group, like a nursing home or a different facility, but we will work with them. They will help us. They will tell us their recommendation as they have in the past.
All right.
We will make sure that you have the reasoning behind our decision before we implement it.
Gotcha.
Or at the same time, whatever. I mean, you'll know why we chose to do it with April leading the charge on that. And I just want to, say ditto to what George said. April was the right person to handle this. I'm very fortunate, and this district is very fortunate, that somehow she got tagged with this. She's done a great job.
Thank you.
All right. So who wants to make a motion? No, there's no help. It's right here. It's all right
I
here.
think Madam Secretary has enough. The motion could be just to approve the recommendation of the administration.
Okay. Wait, say that again. I'm sorry. What did you say?
So are you still going to bring the information to the next meeting that Peyton requested about the other school districts and how we're staffed in our schools in terms of custodians?
I can share that with you in any venue. I can do it via email directly to you, or I can present it next meeting.
Okay, I'm bringing the motion that Chris so eloquently stated for us.
That the board approve the recommendation of the administration regarding masks optional effective March 14th.
That's what I'm bringing, yes.
All right, there's a motion on the floor. Do I have a second? I will second it. Okay, so the motion on the floor, would you please restate that motion one more time?
The motion again is to approve the recommendation of the administration regarding masks optional for the Asheville City Schools effective March 14th. And the minutes will reflect that that means that all school environments, including school buses, will be optional as of March 14th. But the administration and superintendent are empowered to require masks if Buncombe County is in a high transmission scenario and local public health officials are recommending that because of the impact on students and staff. And of course, the district will also make folks aware of the control measure of continuing to wear a mask if you test positive and under certain circumstances for a limited number of days. So all of that will be in the minutes, but the motion is just to improve the recommendation of your administration regarding mask optional.
All right, so the motion has been moved, it's been seconded. Is there a question? Any questions? All right.
I do have a question. If we're voting on it now, we won't vote again until next month.
Correct, it's just an obligation to vote each month.
So why do we have to vote today as opposed to next week during the regular board meeting? Since we just discussed it today.
So my thought behind that was by voting today, it gives people a chance to do what they want to. It gives our students a chance, it gives our parents a chance and our staff to either get vaccinated if they haven't, boosted, whatever, but to also prepare themselves for next week. Because if we were to take this vote next week and it went into effect on Monday, which is when it would go into effect, we'd either have to push it out again, or you're throwing people right then into a situation where this may not give them a chance to get ready or to prepare themselves. So
If we voted next week, it wouldn't give them a chance to prepare themselves?
well,
They obviously know we're going to make a vote one way or the other.
people have known we're going to make a vote this entire time as well. So
And just to clarify, it would be effective next Monday.
right. So it's been moved, it's been seconded. There was a question. Are there any other questions?
I just want to clarify, if it doesn't pass tonight, we wait until next month to do we vote, nothing happens until next month.
No, let me address that. The legal requirement is that you vote at least one time per month.
Okay,
But next Monday will be a brand-new meeting, and there can be a brand-new motion. It can again be on the agenda for whether or not you want to go mask optional if it doesn't pass tonight.
okay.
So
that's
you
what
can
I need.
vote on your mask policy at as many announced board meetings as you want. The General Assembly only requires that you do it at least one time a month.
Okay, thank you.
All right. It's been moved, it's been seconded. Any other questions?
Sorry.
All right. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Aye. Any abstentions? All right, the motion passes. All right. Thank you very much for all of your hard work with this and all the information. Next, I have April Dockery to go over our school-based health center with Tammy Greenwell.
Yes, I am so excited about this. Been years working on this project. So I invite Tammy Greenwell to come join me. She is the Chief Operations Officer from Blue Ridge Health. And she is going to share with you some very exciting news. There's going to be a lot more to come about a student-based health center that is going to open on the Asheville Middle School campus this spring. We were able to get that going really quickly. This came out of a response and a desire to have access to affordable, quality medical and behavioral health as a need. Actually started after we lost the student health centers a few years ago. We had one at Asheville High and at Asheville Middle, and we have been trying to figure out a way to get back to that and a way to do that. So our partnership with United Way and the Community Schools Project kind of initiated that, but under this board's leadership, we have been able to speed that up, and we are very excited. So Tammy's going to give you some more details, and we will share much more with you in the days to follow.
Perfect.
Tammy?
Hi, thanks, April. Thank you, board, for having me here tonight. Very excited about school-based health centers. I work at Blue Ridge Health. We serve 8 counties in western North Carolina, Buncombe being one of those. We've been doing school-based health since 1996 in Henderson County, and we have over 30 school-based health centers now, so we're excited to be working with April and the team at Asheville Middle School. As April mentioned, we started a process last year, an RFA process where we were selected. We've now signed an MOU with the school system, Buncombe County DHHS, and several other partners that we'll be working with as we open the school-based health center. And it's very exciting because it's in renovation mode right now, so we're hopefully will be open by April 11th. We will have a nurse, a registered nurse there, along with a advanced practitioner, so a physician assistant will be there as well. We are currently recruiting for a behavioral health counselor, so there will be an on-site behavioral health counselor for the students there as well. So working with the team to get information out to parents and other stakeholders about what we're planning. And we're very excited. I don't think I've ever met with a school system who says, no, we don't need any more behavioral health, thanks. So we're excited to bring those on campus. We also have a dental program, so there's lots of additional services that we'll add as we continue to grow throughout the years. And we'll just continue to add staff in that process as well. What we'll do at the beginning is we'll see students, because that's what this is all about, giving access to students. So think about acute visits, things that happen to kids during the school day, they come to school sick, those sorts of things. And also chronic illnesses, so working with the school nurse for those kids that have asthma action plans or diabetes pumps. There's lots of chronic health conditions that kids have these days. So working in conjunction with them to take care of those students during the school day. And so as we continue that process, we also want to be open to families of those students. So we want to make sure, that if a family member is sick and their student goes there, that they have access to that school-based health center as well. And then from there, also faculty and staff. So we just like to make sure that we are seen as part of the school, and we want to make sure that we try to keep people as healthy as possible. So that's our overarching goal as we continue to grow the program. So we're excited to get started. Like I said, we hope to get started around April 11th, and we'll be on site. It's much like a doctor's office. So think about a doctor's clinic in a school. We do bill for some of our services. We don't bill for like nursing triage, or if someone comes in and they're like, I need a Band-Aid, or I've got a headache, or something of that nature. Kids are only seen with the written permission of the guardian. So we don't let just kids come in that don't have permission to be seen. We do see students under the North Carolina minor consent law. They can consent for 4 things under that minor consent law, so we do honor that. But for the most part, we always have the parents or guardian's permission, and we do make sure we follow up with them after the appointment when it's over. The other thing is we don't require them to be primary care to us. So even though we are a primary care medical home and we can be that for people, if they don't already have that, we don't require that. So if they come in for an acute issue, we're going to communicate with that primary care provider and give them access to the information, what we provided during that visit, as they manage that care for that student. We see anyone and everyone, regardless of their ability to pay. If they are underinsured or uninsured, we have a sliding scale. And that can go down to as low as $25. If the family can't afford to pay that, we have other mechanisms to make sure that they don't get a bill for those services. But we do bill insurances because we do have diagnostic tests, so we can test for COVID, flu, strep, mono, those sorts of things. And if our provider is assessing a student and they need to bill for that service if they're writing a prescription or they may be doing a well child check. So we'll also be able to provide immunizations. So kids that are behind on immunizations, we'll be able to get them caught up and keep them in school. So we're really excited about getting started. I know that was a lot of information and I talked really fast, but I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
I want to jump up and down and scream because this is the greatest thing I've ever heard. Seriously. A long time ago, we had something, not this great, but we did have something like this at Asheville High School, and I utilized it all the time. I was a single parent with 2 small children, and it saved my life. And I think we're going to find teachers and people in our schools, our staff, our custodial staff, everyone. This is phenomenal. And the fact that there is a sliding scale, no one is turned away. It's great for football, basketball, all of our sports. They can do their physicals there. Immunizations would be absolutely wonderful, and then we wouldn't have to set up places in high school gyms in order to make things. I am thrilled, and I think this is wonderful, and I hope we can expand this and get into the other schools too. But this is wonderful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. We're excited to get started.
Yes, I want to piggyback on what Martha said. 20 years ago when I was doing my master's in education, there was a big push back then for community health within schools and making schools that center of a community. So it sounds like this is what is eventually happening with this. I'm looking on the frequently asked questions, and it says, who will it serve? It says AMS students and families. Then it says no outside. But are other ACS families allowed to access this, or is it only for AMS? Like, what about Montfort North Star? What about?
Right. Eventually, we want to do that, but of course, first, we want to serve the students at Asheville Middle first. Definitely, anyone from the school system, we can talk about that. But what I meant by no outside would be like, someone can't walk in off the street who has no connection to the school or Asheville City Schools and utilize that health center. So they have to have a connection to Asheville City Schools in some way.
I think as we look at other ACS families, not the middle school, we just want to make sure the safety is intact when we bring outside of that campus folks in, even though they're our family.
Yeah.
And Tammy, thank you. I think this is, my wife is a physician and she's been on this bandwagon for years saying that we need this in schools. So thank you. And April, you get another star.
Well, thank you very much.
Anyone have any other questions?
So I think April said you'll also be supporting with behavioral health. What does that look like at the middle school? What will that look like there?
So we'll have a behavioral health counselor there, a licensed clinical social worker, or a licensed clinical mental health counselor. We're in the recruiting phases of that right now. So April and I, and Ms. Nguyen met and discussed what would be the ideal candidate. So we are in the recruiting stages right now.
And that was, and it's a part-time, you said part-time behavioral specialist?
Yes, so we do have some grant funding through United Way, but we also got grant funding through Dogwood Health Trust. So the first year is one counselor part-time, but in the second year, it's a full-time counselor there. So our hope is to recruit someone, get them in, get them working with students, and then they'll be able to move into full-time.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Tammy.
You're welcome.
Y'all are a great organization.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
All right, anything else, April?
No, thank you.
Thank you. All right. Next, we have the middle school ELA adoption with Laura Parks.
Good evening, members of the board and Dr. Freeman. I bring to you a purchase for a new middle school ELA curriculum. This curriculum, the goals of this adoption are to have a consistent 6-8 ELA curriculum between our two middle schools, which has not happened since Montford North Star was opened. The previous ELA curriculum that we had at Asheville Middle School was not meeting the needs of our students there, so we were in a process where we were looking for a new curriculum for Asheville Middle School as well. We completed pilots this fall with teachers from both Asheville Middle and Montford North Star, and we met with all of our ELA teachers in early February to discuss those pilots with them, to get feedback from teachers and from student perspective. So we also asked our teachers to collect student feedback and to discuss which curriculum we'd like to move forward with. We did have all teachers participate and learn about My Perspectives and Wit and Wisdom. Those were the two curriculums that were decided upon. And all teachers at both schools indicated that they would like to implement the curriculum I bring to you tonight, which is called My Perspectives. That has been implemented at Montford North Star for the past 3 years. So it is a continuation of the curriculum for them, and it would be a new ELA curriculum for Asheville Middle School. We are recommending a 6-year license to give time for full implementation. This quote includes digital access and consumable materials for students each year. It is also integrated with our online systems, Canvas and ClassLink, and includes ongoing professional development for teachers. And so our plan is for teachers to receive introduction training and materials before they leave for the summer, so that we are ready for a full implementation in the fall. The total cost is $117,546 for that 6-year subscription.
Does anyone have any questions for Laura? And you said this has been used for 3 years now at North Star?
Yes, we've used it for 3 years at Montford North Star. They do have a new edition. That's a 2022 edition. So we would be changing editions for Montford North Star.
Are they included in the 117?
They are included. We do have a discount. We had a multi-year license for some of those at Montford North Star. So they're giving us about $11,000 in discounts to account for those licenses that would be shift to that new edition and the district license.
Okay.
We've basically piloted it at Montford North Star.
Yeah, yes, we have. And then also piloted at Asheville Middle School this fall.
Okay, and it received rave reviews.
It did. We had a lot of rich discussion. Our teachers really liked both. My Perspectives is a 6-12 curriculum, so it starts at 6th grade. And teachers felt back, it was honestly the student feedback that swayed a lot of teachers. They felt like it was just more engaging, and they really enjoyed the consumables and that side of the curriculum. So,
that's awesome.
Yep.
All right. So this will be on our, excuse me, on our consider agenda for next week's meeting. Are there any other questions for Laura? All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Next, we have our EC update with Dr. Dowd.
Hi, Board. Dr. Jean, Paula Dowd, for those guys I haven't met, some of you, so pleasure meeting you. Okay, so I was requested to come up and give you an update for exceptional children's programs today. So we put together a PowerPoint for you. Let me see if I can get it to roll, though. Okay, so first I want to let you know who is on our EC team. We have Hope Wilson, Allison Kirkman, Catherine Shumsky, Zach Cohen, and Amy Powchek. And we work collaboratively to ensure that the supports are through all of the buildings, preschool. We've been working with teachers to cover teacher assistants, everything that's been needed this school year to make sure the provision of services are there. Teachers have support and children have support. I also want to shout out to the EC teachers, to our instructional assistants, related service providers, speech language pathologist, the school psychologist, our behavior support assistant, sign language interpreters, and the EC data and budget manager, because it's taken all of us to work through COVID, the return to school, and again, to ensure that the provision of services are in place for the students. This slide is a breakdown of information that we put together using our April 1, 2021 child count and various other details, Learning Circle, Power School. So these numbers have changed over the past month or so. So if you're looking at this, this is the overall district enrollment and then the percentage of students by demographics that have IEPs. Our next slide, we put this in here just for those of you guys that may need some information on the categories of eligibility to be eligible for special education. So this explains to you the different categories in the state of North Carolina and what those categories, how to define those categories. Okay, so let me see if I can get out of this. Back to that, okay. Our next slide is a December 1 child count. We do 2 different funding child counts. December 1 is the federal, April 1 is a state. And in that, we get funded for each student that has an active IEP. December 1, April 1. So the December 1 child demographics on this slide shows you the information. We had 526 students with disabilities, with IEPs that we counted on December 1. 350 total males and 176 females. And we broke it down again by demographics. Our next slide, again, is more information from the December 1 child count, giving you the total percentage of students with disabilities by race and gender. The next slide we have to present to you is the demographics, again, the percentage of students with disabilities by race. Again, these are students with active IEPs on the December 1 child count. Our next slide, again, using that information, December 1, are the total number of students with the total percentage, of students with disabilities by exceptionality. And we have the acronyms. So if you have any questions on what the acronyms are, when you go back to review it, you can pull up the slide that we gave you that has the disability categories. This slide breaks the information down by the disability categories for each area, district-wide.
All right, I'm going to ask, what is AU?
Autism.
Thank you.
I can go through this and give you the acronyms if you want. But this shows you how many, again, students are in each categorical area. This is a continuation of that.
All right, I'm going to ask another one. What is
Sure.
LD?
What is what?
LD?
Learning disabilities.
Okay. Okay.
Go. This is another continuation of the same. Okay, this is a breakdown of information for M-class and how we have shown some progression for that population of children, grades K through 3. I don't have star data for you because the disaggregation of that data is a little bit more complex because they don't break it out with students with IEPs. So we have to go in and look at that by teacher, and what we'll come up with that is by grade levels and give you specific data on that. At M-class, we have shown some increases, so that's exciting for this school year. Graduation rates, And I just took the whole slide from the State Department on that one. But for our 4-year graduation cohort, students with disabilities are at 83.3% for the graduation rate. For the 2020-2021 school year. Okay, discipline. This slide is for district-wide, out-of-school suspensions. So we got the percentage of blacks, whites, multi-race, and Hispanics. The next is how many days of out-of-school suspension and the percentage of each race in that 563.45 days. The total number of incidents, the total days, and then the district enrollment for each racial demographic by demographic. The right side is that's 144 students total district-wide that are in this out-of-school suspension chart. The next 2 bullets is about students with disabilities, students with IEPs. 32.6% of that chart, which is 47 children with IEPs, were in that count of the 144 students. Does that make sense? Okay, and we are at a 12.7 total school population for students with disabilities based on that December 1 child count. The next slide shows you for students with disabilities, again, students with IEPs, our percentage. So of the 47, 31 children that are black, 65.9% have been suspended, out of school suspension. Hispanic, 2 of the 47, multiracial, 6 of the 47, and white, 8 of the 47. Disproportionality. I've come and spoken to you about this before. Last year, we were on the warning list for it, for disproportionality. There's a significant disproportionality and there's a warning for disproportionality. What we listed on here, they've changed it, I think it was last school year, where they now include children 3 through 21. Before it was school-age children. So that also changed the way that they calculate it, which also made changes for us to move to a warning list last year. Sorry. Okay, so you'll see that we have, in 3 areas, we're on the warning list. ISS totaling 10 days or less for black students. OSS expulsion totaling 10 days or less for black students, and total disciplinary removals for black students. We're also under the category of the warning list for identification in the area of intellectual disabilities for black students. What we were told last school year when we received this notification was that if we continue to show progress, we'll remain on the warning list. If we can get our risk ratio below 3, or let me say when we get our risk ratio below 3, we will come off of the warning list.
So how do we, Paula, know where we are in terms of that during the school year?
It's the calculation of going in and monitoring the suspension rates, what's happening through behavior handbook. And that, again, is a little bit complicated under the world of students with disabilities and IEPs because we have to do it by hand because there's there's nothing that marks the child as having an IEP. So we go in and calculate it out by hand.
So do we wait until the end of the year to calculate this, or does the state calculate it for us?
The state will calculate it for us when they send the list it's usually closer to the end of the school year that we'll get it.
I guess what I'm saying is we do data benchmarking to kind of know where we are with our instructional. We're looking at our discipline issues. Why wouldn't we look at this ratio at least mid-year to say where we are? I'd like to be able to know that if we could, please.
Yeah, we pull the data within our department and do share it with Ms. Excuse me.
Paula, is there any way that you could possibly give us comparisons for, say, the last 5 years, the percentage of the total school population with disabilities, the behavioral issues, et cetera, so that we can see what our percentages were last year and the year before that and the year before that?
Through the disproportion, yeah, we've got all that data because we have been on it, started with the warning, and then we went to significant disproportionality, I think 2 or 3 years, and then last year dropped back down to the warning list. Yeah, we've got all that information.
If you could get that for us, I think that would be really helpful.
Because then you can see what the risk ratios are
Right.
and see how they have decreased.
Right.
With some steps that we've taken to do it.
That would
Yeah,
be
we can get you
extremely
all that
helpful. Thank you.
And I'd love to hear about the steps. I mean, it's about the policies, the procedures, the practices, recognizing that we've been on this for 5 years. What are the steps what are the procedures we put in place to address it?
Through the IDEA grant, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, there's a component of it for disproportionality, where we were either under mandatory, where we have to pull 15% of our budget out, or we can do it through, there's another word and it's not coming to, where we make the decision to pull it out. Last year, we pulled the money out, and we have specific strategies in place that's how we are going to use those funds to look specifically at disproportionality. That's the primary role of Amy Pauchek, and works very closely with Ms. Kane and Ms. Parks in regards to the academic portions of things, and Catherine Shumsky, Amy, and the EC team work on the disciplinary parts. But yeah, I'd be able to share that part of the IDEA grant and how we wrote it last year. Okay, so I did do a list for future needs as well. So in speaking with the EC team, we'll have to look at an additional school psychologist, speech language pathologist, looking at an adapted physical education teacher. We'll have to get in and review the specific school needs for to determine licensed staff and instructional assistants after open enrollment closes. We also want to put a plug back in for professional development in the area of specially designed instruction in the general education setting, co-teaching, so that we go back and we get our staff that are new to Asheville City Schools some training on co-teaching, and even pull back in the staff that are interested, again, to moving it up to the next level. We had a real concentration on that pre-COVID. COVID hit, and it all kind of hasn't been picked back up like it should. And then finally, to continue exploring potential licensure and certification for our classified staff. And then a collaboration with the EC department, student services, and mental health to develop a long-term collaborative plan for systematic student supports. Questions?
So you're going to get back to us on some of those strategies that you...
Yeah, how we wrote the plan this year for our PRC 70, and then get back with you and give you all of the information for disproportionality and how we've gone up and down the past couple of years.
So what do the roles and responsibilities look like on the day-to-day for a school psychologist?
A school psychologist is doing varying things. They're working with the MTSS teams, multi-system of supports. They're also working to ensure that we meet the 90-day timeline for eligibility purposes. We also need to start looking again at counseling as a related service, and that would be another role that school psychologists could pick up, or working with Kadada's team as well, because it does take a specific licensure, and that, I think, is the primary concentration. If we would bring in another one, we could disperse those roles as well.
Thank you.
Sorry, I took my mask off. I'm getting used to it. Feel free to email me if you have any other questions or some other details you'd like to know about special education. Again, kudos to the staff in the district because they've worked very, very hard the past couple of years to keep everything moving forward.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Dow, for putting this together. It's a lot of data to digest.
Yeah, that's what.
You know, the thing that jumps out to me very quickly is the, I mean, to use the word again, disproportionality of our student population and who are classified as EC. And so I just want to reiterate that desire to know about the those policies, those procedures, those practices, because as a very wise woman in this community told me the other day, like that's where the heart of equity work is in looking at those policies and procedures and seeing what's inequitable about. So,
Agreed.
yeah, thank you.
We'll definitely be calling you back up. So.
I'll be so excited. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Dowd. Next, we have Attorney Chris Campbell with Policy 2310.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Excuse me, Superintendent Freeman and board members. This policy is not on for first reading or consideration. This is just for information and discussion and to whether or not you would want to explore a policy of this nature for first reading. So the policy changes, if you look at the copy that you've got online, I'm not so sure the copy in your packet has the additional paragraph, but it's very short. So let me just read it to you and then I'll explain it and take any questions you might have. The policy addition for public comment that is under consideration is as follows. The board permits public comment on issues relevant to and within the jurisdiction of the school district. No person may use the public comment portion of the meeting to actively campaign for or endorse a specific candidate running for political office, public office. Persons are not limited from speaking on issues relevant to school business or the school system. For purpose of this policy, active campaigning includes but is not limited to stating that a person is a candidate for public office, asking for support for a candidate running for public office, and or stating what a candidate will do if elected to public office. For the first time in this year, there will be an election for the Asheville City School Board. I believe there are currently 9 declared candidates running for 4 seats. This is the policy of the Burke County Schools, another school district in North Carolina, that they do not allow active campaigning as part of public comment. We have researched it and we feel that this is a legitimate time, place, manner restriction. It is a topical restriction, not a viewpoint restriction in any way, shape, or form. In other words, public comment is for this board to hear comments about the school district. You are not a board that elects anyone to public office, and running for public office is not a matter of concern for the Board of Education. So we think that this would be a policy decision that you could make to not allow people to come to the mic for purposes of campaigning.
My question
I'm happy
is,
to answer any questions.
when someone does come to the mic and they do want to use our time, how do we stop that?
Certainly, the way of enforcing that would be to first give the person a warning and tell them that per the policy, we don't allow it. It would also be part of the chairman's introductory remarks prior to public comment each time. Step 2 would be to cut off the mic. And then step 3 with anyone who refuses to leave the podium would be to declare them disrupting a public meeting, and they could be removed by law enforcement. So it would be no different than any other restriction where somebody steps out of bounds. For example, personal attacks on school board members. Not the job you do as school board members, that's part of the job, you know that. But personal attacks on you as individuals would also not be allowed from the mic and would follow that same procedure.
Okay, thank you.
So it is the pleasure of the board to discuss this now and to let the chairman know if you'd like to put it on for a first reading at a future meeting by consensus for further consideration, or you can decide you just want to think about this for a little while.
What do board members think? Shonda?
I think since it's election season, it's definitely appropriate.
Okay. Peyton?
I'm struggling with it a little bit just because I don't want to create a lot of restrictions that we have to enforce on speech, and I think that there are some gray areas that could get into. One area that I really don't like is the inability of someone to introduce themselves as a candidate. I think that's overly restrictive, and given that members of the board will be running from an incumbent seat, I do feel like it kind of unfairly restricts a little bit of competition. So those are my thoughts right now.
The need to delineate that you're going to campaign, what is the purpose of that?
Chris?
I don't know if that's directed to me.
Who is that directed to?
Well, I think it was to Peyton. What is the purpose of someone who has a complaint that falls in the guidelines of the policies that they have to say they're a candidate for the school board?
I think, and thinking about the opposite of that, if they don't disclose that they're a candidate for school board, I think some might perceive it as disingenuous, particularly if it was a negative comment toward the school board. So
it could be perceived disingenuous either way.
Sure, and I think right now we don't have a rule on it, and I'm not inclined to add that at the moment. Yeah, it definitely could go both ways.
Martha?
In all honesty, I think it's something that I really don't have a dog in this fight, but going forward, I think that this is something that you really do need. And if people are going to be allowed to speak as potential board members, then I think we need to take a look at inviting every single person who is a candidate to speak, because I don't think it would be okay for one or two people to come and take the time to speak at our meeting. I also think that it's imperative that we do something about the disrespect that has been sometimes noticed towards different individuals when people are speaking at the podium. And I think it's important that we not allow that going forward. So to me, this definitely we need to discuss, and I think we do need a first read for this one.
George?
Yeah, I mean, we're in uncharted territory with this election coming up. So, I think it's, Peyton, I hear that concern of that disingenuousness. I also, I worry that not putting in some language that prohibits direct political speech, kind of like what Martha said, it provides a platform for people who have access to that podium. And so while, yeah, I'm kind of leaning toward, we do need to read through this and consider putting it into the policy.
So what I'm hearing is at least two. Shonda, were you in favor of having a first read for it, or do you want to sit on this a little bit and mull it over a little bit more? First read would be next Monday, correct?
Correct. First reading can be whenever you want it to be.
Okay.
Of course, your policy provides that the superintendent and the chairman set the agenda.
Okay.
So really, they need input as to how soon you would want to consider this, and certainly you can make recommended changes to it when it does come up for first reading as well.
Gotcha.
My advice would be that you put this on for your next work session,
Okay.
for your first read, because that provides you with a much better platform to discuss it at that point. And there's no urgency in passing this policy either at this point.
Okay. George?
Yeah, I respect that. I mean, I actually do feel a little urgency just because now that the filing deadline is passed and we have candidates, I mean, I don't want to be here in October as we're nearing the general election and deciding on it. So, but yeah, I respect that.
We put it on for the next work session. That would be the first work session in April. So we could do that. That's a month away. Well, that also gives us more time to digest this a little bit more. So we'll put it on for the April agenda. She did. Yeah. You said you were good with that, Shonda? Yeah. Okay. Any
Thanks
other
very much.
questions for Chris? Thank you. Oh, no, I do have a question. Get back over there. You said, how many other districts are doing this?
To my knowledge, there's only one district that expressly says that campaigning is not part of public comment, and that's Burke County School.
Just Burke? Okay.
Right.
But do others have similar language?
I do not know of others that have similar language.
Okay.
So it is fair comment that not only is this uncharted waters as far as the election coming up for this board, but this is not a standard provision that other boards have had as well. Just something to think about.
Yeah, that's a good point, and it's probably worth, recognizing that.
Yeah. I just think it is a good idea for this board to be very clear. You're either going to allow people 3 minutes to campaign, or you're not. And that, I think, avoids any uncertainty, controversy, hurt feelings. And as far as fairness, that lets other folks know. It is, I will tell you, it is not appropriate, obviously, for board members to give campaign speeches from the dais. You're here to conduct school board business. So you got to consider all that as well. If someone is running for school board and on the school board, they would literally have to come down here during public comment if they wanted equal time, and they can do that. There's nothing that prevents a school board member from giving public comment, nothing at all. So that's the way you would address that issue, that if there was a sitting school board member, others are being allowed to campaign, that's how that sitting school board member would also take advantage of that opportunity. It's all about fairness.
But here again, my question, if one person chooses to use this platform as a campaign speech, do we not need to invite everyone else to do the same?
No, you wouldn't. There's no requirement that you invite others because by its very nature, public comment is available to all. So it's not an equal time provision that you would need to be concerned about, in my opinion.
Okay.
But you want to be clear as to what your policy is, and that is, in effect, an invitation. If you decide to allow it, then you're declaring that to all the candidates and to the public at large that you are going to permit that.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Good issue to tackle now.
Well, thank you so much for bringing that to
Certainly.
our attention. All right. Next, have Georgia Harvey with our budget amendments and budget updates.
Good afternoon or evening. Let's start with budget amendments. Your first 3 pages are a summary of the amendments of 0301 through 0305. The first amendment, 0301, is a state amendment for early grade reading. We received of $28,859. The additional amounts were a move of CTE months of employment to instructional funds. Budget Amendment 0302 was a decrease in ESSER 3 that was 173 of $7.
Did you say $7?
$7.
I've got $7 if we.
The next one's even better. Budget Amendment 0303 was an increase of $1 for school nutrition in ESSER 174.
The whole dollar?
Yes.
Okay.
Budget Amendment 0304 was a new ESSER funding, ESSER 3 funding, 192, which is for cyber bullying, and that $47,110.
We don't have that one, Georgia.
Excuse me?
We don't have that one.
I will make
What
sure.
is it again?
It is ESSER 3. It
Right.
was PRC 192. It was for cyberbullying prevention, $47,110.
Yeah, it's online.
Okay, 0305. That one is also an ESSER 3 for Gaggle, which is our technology, $14,722.
Okay.
That's all of the budget amendments.
All right. Any questions on the budget amendments?
So what does cyberbullying prevention look like?
I'll have to refer to Mr. Whiteside for that.
The specific funds here for Gaggle cyberbullying, we have a system called Gaggle. Many other districts use it, and it has visibility into the student's Google Drive account. They can see the emails the students write and receive, and they can see documents and images stored in the student's Google account. There's an AI agent running to evaluate that. If something scary or untoward is found, then a human employed by Gaggle looks at it for context, and if it is alarming, they pick up a phone and start calling school staff to alert us there's an issue. We have had significant mental health issues or threatening behavior identified through this service in the past.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Chairman Carter had requested an update in the budget. So your second page shows your year-to-date actual and estimated budget. I pulled Fund 2, 4, and 8, which are the ones we have more control over. Fund 1, which is our state fund, and Fund 3, which is our federal funds. We, of course, use those per the guidelines of the state and federal funding. So Fund 2, our general fund, to date, our total revenues, which were planned and are budgeted, $28,205,311. Our total estimated expenses, that is our salaries, and our encumbered expenses planned for this year, $27,928,537. So we anticipate a small balance from our budget of $276,774.
That is left over at the June 30th.
Right. That is what we estimate based on what we budgeted.
So Georgia, correct me if I'm wrong, please. So when you look at total revenues for Fund 2, 28,205,311, those are not just revenues or sources of income that we're getting in. We've pulled from our fund balance to get that 28 million, correct?
That is correct.
So the 276 that you see left over is simply money we borrowed from ourselves.
Correct. That is correct.
And that is really important that people see that. Our revenues are not exceeding our expenses. We are borrowing from our savings to meet our expenses. That probably needs to be in red down there. That 276, that 659, that 217 are possibly our savings that we put into the total revenues. Is that correct?
That's correct. So for example, in Fund 2, we budgeted $3.5 million from our fund balance. So out of that $3.5 million, we anticipate $277,000 left.
And that, and I don't know the exact figure, it was like 5 point something million when we pulled the 3.5 out.
Correct.
Okay. So if we need another plug-in of 3.5 million for the next school, it's not going to be there.
We won't have it next year. We may have about 1.8. So once again, we pulled 3.5 for our budget this year. It looks like we will have close to 1.8 for next year.
I just want to add this too, and I know that Tanya's coming up next. We've had people say, well, if you just open up enrollment, there's your $5 million. That is not accurate. That is not accurate. There are not 400 people applying. Tanya, am I correct on that? That, you know, it's easy to throw out that anecdote that if you just open enrollment, you have all these people. That is not accurate. You don't have an understanding of this budget or enrollment. Okay.
So the next area is Capital Fund 4. Our total revenue, $5,406,243. Again, I'd like to say that includes pulling from fund balance $2.6 million, that's included in the 5. Our anticipated expenses through the end of the year, based on the projects we have encumbered, $4.7 million. We anticipate $659,286.
And again, the capital fund is what we're fixing our buildings with.
Correct.
I just want people to make sure we have that
can only be used for
delineation.
that.
It can only be used for fixing our buildings, so we have a total of 5.4, and we already know that Asheville High, for instance, is 14 million at least.
So I anticipate that we will have, again, we started with approximately 4.3 million in our fund balance. We may have 2 million to start next year, which will not be equal to what we pulled this year.
Okay.
And then the last one, the other restricted funds, Fund 8. Those are, again, restricted. They're grants, Medicaid, our pre-K funds, Head Start, and our city tax appropriation. Revenue, $6.1 million. Again, with total expenses and salaries expected, $5.9. So we look at $217 approximately to carry over. I'd like to say that in Fund 8, we use all of our city tax appropriation for our local supplement, and we used Fund 2 our general to pay the overage that we don't have in Fund 8. We started this year with a beginning balance, fund balance of Fund 8 as 1.7. All of that was not restricted, but going into next year, we will have 0 to be able to use for our local supplement in fund balance. All of that will be restricted going into next year. Questions before I go to the last slide? Okay. So I just wanted to give a lot of times there's questions on our salaries. Our state revenues, we use 91% of our state funding for salaries. Local funding, we use 79%. That's what's projected for this year. And then out of other Fund 8, we are at 88% for salaries.
So go back over that again.
And our state fund.
And the state funds are the funds we get from the state to pay our teachers and so forth, yes?
Right,
Okay.
and many other things. We use 91% of our state funding for salaries.
All right.
Local revenues, the 28 million, we're using 79% of that for salaries. And then the 6 million in Fund 8, 88%, and of course, that includes our local supplement and salaries in that 88%.
So the local funds is the amount that we receive through the county, correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right, wow, this looks wonderful. Anyone have any questions for Georgia?
So Georgia, looking at that first graph for state fund, I feel like we're constantly kind of caught in this balance between what can the district do, right? In terms of supporting our teachers and supporting our educators in the confines of what we can afford versus what can the General Assembly do across the state. How much control do we have in our district over how we are allocating these monies for salaries versus something else?
With the state, there are guidelines. With our local budget, that is we have all control on that.
I would presume that the 9% that you see with state is a requirement by the state to use that for whatever that 9% is. Is that correct, Georgia?
It is not a requirement, but there are restrictions on what you can use.
Because I would say, why aren't we using all of state money for salaries?
Yes,
So
there are restrictions.
George, that was a good question. James and Martha and I met with the association president and vice president, and we're meeting with the city council and the county commissioners to talk about the budget. But your question is a good question, but it doesn't solve the train wreck that we have. For us to look at this budget more closely, we can look at supplies and materials, we have to look at our footprint, and we have to look at personnel. And I've had this discussion with James and with Martha and Georgia in the presence. You guys need to give us some directives because we are headed down the track, and this is where we're going to head. And we've talked about this for 2 years. What do you want us to do about this? And we can't wait until you get a new board.
All right, no, we have a budget coming up, so Hayden, you hit your button. Oh, were you turning it off?
No. A couple of things. In looking at the budget in more detail, can we get a ratio of our staff cost to our total, like a per capita staff cost? Just because I think that that's something that is hidden in these numbers, and we always talk about per capita spending, but I think that that's something that's really important for us to present to the elected officials is, do we have a unique problem here based on cost of living and how the school system is funded? And beyond that, in terms of directives, are we able to draw up a couple of budget scenarios with different percent cut, looking at across the board to see what that might look like and if that's something that we can stomach? And does the board have any ideas on what scenarios we'd like to see?
Something else that we need to talk about here that has not been talked about before is that, our budget is based on Buncombe County, or vice versa, you could say. We are an urban school district. We are a city school district. Urban school districts inherently have more complicated issues than suburban or urban. In general, I'm making a blanket statement, but it is. I think we're compared to Buncombe quite a bit when we're very, very different. 9 of the housing developments, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, come to our school district. 1 goes to Buncombe County, and I'm not criticizing Buncombe County because I'm sure we all have our issues, but we are an urban setting, and that's not talked about enough here. We are a city school district with those inherent problems that come with a city school district. And, is it fair, and I don't know how you would do this, that there is this proportion the way it's done? How did that come up? But, that's a whole bigger conversation, I guess.
Peyton, I wanted to address what you said. We have actually talked to Jean about exactly what you just said, and we've asked that we have some ideas. They already know that there are things that we could do, and none of them, as far as I'm concerned, are actually palatable, but they are working on getting us that very information that you requested. And I'm going to say this again, and I hope people are listening. If you want to do something to help Asheville City School System, you need to broaden your horizons. You need to speak to City Council. You need to speak to county commissioners. But most of all, you need to speak to our state legislators because we need their help and we need it now.
So in terms of that direction, I like what Peyton said and I agree with Martha. We've talked about that. So by the April work session, we need to have
Scenarios.
at least 3 scenarios.
Do you want those to be different from what we've brought before? Or to
Well,
include those?
I think we need to have what we've looked at before because, quite frankly, we slept since then, and it might be a good refresher. If those are options that we need to readdress, that's fine. But that would be the directive at this point. Just get us the different options. I mean, we can sit down and look at it. I mean, we're going to be the ones who have to vote on it anyway. So, yeah, just bring those to us. So April, for the April work session.
I mean, this is also very complicated because you're not talking about a couple of $100,000. And second, this is not a one-time fix.
Right.
And third, we have to anticipate how the cost will increase over the years. This is a multi-step process. It's almost like you have to build the plane while you're flying it. I mean, we have a date for our strategic plan, but we can't wait on this for months. I mean, that's just my opinion.
Our budget conversations with the county start this week.
Yes. So that'll be a perfect timing.
So, and I'd also like to remind the board that there is a salary increase mandated starting in July. And that will be, we have not heard what our health and retirement increase will be, but those are additional costs that we will have to bear on the local budget.
And this salary increase is the unfunded mandate from the state, correct?
Those that are paid out of local, yes.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for Georgia?
Can we see in those scenarios a 6% across the board cut and a 10% across the board cut? Is that something?
In salaries or?
No, just where you would suggest if we had to trim the budget by that percentage, where that would come from and what suggestions y'all have.
Yeah. And I might remind the board that, of course, that reducing our footprint, facilities, human resources, those are the first and the greatest areas you would see a reduction. And then, of course, the change in the way we're doing payroll would be the third one. And we've presented those previously. I'll bring those back to you.
Perfect. Well, not perfect, but thank you. All right, next I have Dr. Dickerson with our contracts and MOUs.
Chairman Carter, members of the board, Dr. Freeman, the following MOUs were presented to the board as information last time, and they simply have signatures this time around.
Okay. All right. So nothing else? That was it? Okay. All right. Thank you. Next, I have Ms. Tanya Perche with our student releases and an enrollment update.
Good evening, board. Before you have 10 releases from Asheville City Schools to Buncombe County Schools. And again, you would like an enrollment update. So I'm going to provide you with that tonight.
before you start, I want to say, it's been awesome seeing the billboards and the signs out at the schools and around the community, promoting our open enrollment, so thank you.
You're so welcome, and we're gonna do more. So where we are right now, I pulled this information on Friday about 4 o'clock. So in all, for this school year, we've had 1,302 applications.
Is that new applications?
Put your thing on.
It's just applications across the board. Whoever filled out an application, we have given attention to that. So it's been 1,302. Total enrollment right now across the board, pre-K through 12, is 4,440. That's great. And that is up from our last report in January. And so for open enrollment, we have had a total since open enrollment started, 410 applications. And out of those 410, we have 211 of those are kindergartners.
And I had to be educated on this the other day when I asked this question, but those who are already in the system don't have to enroll, don't have to fill out the application, correct? So that means that that's 410 additional students to what we already have.
Yes, these are new coming in. These are our pre-K students. We're working with Susanna and her team to make sure all of our kids that are in pre-K, we know where they're going and making sure that their applications are complete. And I'm going to be working with Ms. Jackson to make sure we take care of our families in public housing. Any questions?
How many of these are out-of-district applications?
Great question. I knew it was gonna come. I would prefer to give you a final analysis once open enrollment is closed, so I can give you a more detailed apples to apples from last year to this year, so we'll know whether if it was an increase or a decrease. So I'll be ready to give that after open enrollment closes.
So when do out-of-district kids get the yes or the no?
They would get the yes or the no sometime in April, March. April 30th.
Okay,
So everyone will know their placement by May-ish.
okay.
Any other questions?
You have a question, George? Okay.
And board, if you would like some flyers or a yard sign or postcards to put up, please come see me. This is a district initiative, and we are doing quite well, and we hope to do great. Thank you.
Perfect. Oh, I'm sorry, come back. You said that we have 211 kindergarten applications. How, to date, how does that compare to like last year?
That's the report I'm hoping to give you at the end of open enrollment, so that I can look back and look, and I want to be able to compare apples to apples, not apples to oranges.
Do you have a feeling though? Is it higher this?
I don't, enrollment is not based off of feeling, we base it off of accurate numbers.
Well, all right, thank you for laying that out.
I've enjoyed working with you, Tanya.
I appreciate you letting me know that, so. I just want to make sure that I can keep telling people to send their kindergartners to us.
Yes.
Okay.
Keep telling them, send their kindergartners. We're saying, come on.
Okay.
And it's out of district, in district, come on.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
will you also have a demographic breakdown of that when you present the final data to us?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And you'll have it by school as well?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Any
Thank you,
other
Tanya.
questions?
I don't have any more questions after that, so. I'm good. Thank you. All right. Next, I have Dr. Dickerson with two of our policy, one's policy read, one's a procedural read.
the administration is bringing policies 6305, safety and student transportation services, and the procedure for policy 8305. Both of these are for second and final read.
Anyone have any questions on the policies and the procedure for Dr. Dickerson?
And Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, I noticed that you have policies for first read after the HR update. Can I do that now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
That's fine.
So we are also bringing or presenting to the board policy 7430, which is the substitute teacher policy, and the procedure to that policy, eligibility criteria to be a substitute. And basically, we're just adding language about the third-party substitute management. Since we were with ESS, we needed to make reference to that in our policy. Yeah, so, and I want to add to the board and just let everyone know that as far as the pay for ESS, we are the highest, or we pay our substitutes the most. We're the highest paid district in the surrounding area. So our certified teachers get $130, and our non-certified get $105. So we are higher than our neighboring school districts. I just wanted to say that about substitute teaching. The third policy is 6402, and Chris Campbell, you may want to help me with this one. This is the participation by historically underutilized businesses, and the board has adopted the following percentage goals for participation in the school district's contracts by women and minority-owned businesses. And what we needed to do was put a percentage for participation by minority-owned businesses. We can always change this, and what we have put down is 5%. And after doing some research with neighboring districts, it ranged from 1% to 14%. I think our close neighbor is at 3%. And I'm trying not to name other districts, but we looked at some other districts, and it ranged from 10, 15, and we chose 5. Now we can change that. It was recommended that we look at maybe between 5 and 8%. And I'm gonna let Chris chime in if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, and the important thing to remember, this is a good faith provision of looking at what you want your goal to be, but it is just that. It's not a goal. It's not a earmark. It's not a threshold. You still have to competitively bid things, and you still have to choose the lowest responsive and responsible bidder. So you, when you do construction projects and other things, you do solicit minority-owned and female-owned businesses, so that's part of your process anyway. So this is a good faith provision of what you want your goal to be. And I believe Ms. Lopez in our office helped out with this. And Dr. Dickerson, I can't remember, did y'all also look at the city of Asheville, county of Buncombe's percentage as well?
We looked at Buncombe County. They're at 3%. Hickory County, I was trying not to name counties, but Hickory.
Right, but I mean the actual county government itself, not just.
No, I'm sorry. Yes, we did. She did.
Okay, so I think this 5% is, I can't remember if the city of Asheville has a different percentage, if you have that in front of you. But I think that was all taken into account.
Yes, sir.
It's merely a recommendation, and again, it's not a quota or anything of that nature.
Okay. All right. So those are all 3 for first read, so we can delve into that more, and we'll be looking at those at our next meeting.
Correct.
All right. So while you're there, who wants to go first, you or Sarah?
I'll kick it off.
Okay.
So just wanted to give everyone an update on where we are with resignations. We have to date, well, as of Friday, 72 as of today. We have a couple more that came in since July 72 resignations. As far as vacancies, the number is 58, and we calculated 40 classified positions and 18 certified positions. And both, you know, when you look at the classified positions, we're including, of course, bus drivers, custodians, and in some cases where we have instructional assistants, we also have another position called this academic support assistant, which they serve in the same capacity. One doesn't require the bus driver requirement, doesn't have the bus driver requirement, the other one does. So if you add those together, it increases the number of vacancies. And throughout the year, we've had those positions posted. We've had the DLT positions posted. We had a number of positions posted, which brings me to what I want to discuss tonight with you and make some things clear. District leader is currently discussing the state allotments for each school. And in the discussion, we are considering job assignment preferences for APS, staff first, and then we're looking at staff resignations and retirements for the end of the year. And I hope to let all APS staff know that school job assignments for next year will be given to them or will be addressed with them sometime this month. But as far as current vacancies and postings, this year, because of the unusual number of resignations during the school year and the difficulty of filling these vacancies, schools have struggled and principals have had to ask staff to cover. I want to personally thank each school staff for their support and for going beyond the call of duty to help and cover classes during this difficult time. To the decision to post or not to post begins with a conversation with principals and assessing the needs to post. For a couple of years now, not knowing how long a position may be vacant during a school year creates anxiety and frustration and uncertainty in filling this position, filling these positions. So this year, if the principal could modify classroom schedules or find a way to fill in the gaps with current staff, then that's what we did. Keep in mind, there hasn't been a lot of applicants. So some postings have been on the website all year without a single applicant. We've been having instructional assistants serve as classroom teachers. We've had some administrators who serve at 2 different schools. But we're still trying to find interims. From my side of things, it has been a trying year. And we have had, and again, I want to thank the staff who have been instrumental in making sure schools are serving students. And at the end of the day, that's what we're talking about. But I know it has been taxing on all of us. I believe timing is everything. And with the end of the school year approaching, I think our district-wide career fair is a great opportunity to recruit some top-notch talent. So, which brings me to our career fair. At our career fair, candidates will have several options to engage with schools over the course of the 2 days, Friday, March 25th, and Saturday, March 26th. I want to thank Dr. Deckett for her leadership in orchestrating this career fair. Friday, March 25th, candidates will tour up to 3 schools and attend a very nice barbecue dinner at the middle school. And this is where they will learn more, the candidates will learn more about our schools and our departments. And members of our community are also welcome to join and welcome our potential employees. On the 26th, the candidates will drop in for an informational session and attend a career fair held at the middle school from 9 until 1 p.m. So, that's the update as far as HR, but we have more. And that's why I'm going to bring up Sarah Kane to discuss some updates on incentives.
Before you walk away, Mark,
I'm right here.
and I'm right here, would you reiterate for us process for hiring individuals just one more time?
Okay. So if there's a vacancy, let's say someone resigns, which happens a lot. I get the notification and the request to post information is on a sheet, and I have a conversation with principals. And I will say in most cases, there have been a scenario where I'll take the Spanish position at Dixon. There was a conversation with the principal, and he looked at his schedule and he said, okay, knowing that it probably will take forever to find a viable candidate, he looked at his school and basically said, we will figure it out at the school level. Other cases, if there's a means of finding an interim, and in some cases we've had people who have IAs to fill in, but we have posted positions. We're just not getting candidates. And I think that's what the frustration comes. So to answer your question, Martha, we post a position. If it doesn't fill, then we find other measures, but we have conversations with principals.
No, it doesn't answer the question. Okay, who actually hires someone? I mean, who makes the decision to hire?
The decision to hire comes from the schools. The schools interview the candidates, and if they have candidates, they interview, and then they make a recommendation to my office. And then what I do is I make sure there is licensure involved, so we go through the process there, we look at the salary, and then the official offer comes from me, myself.
Okay.
I make the official phone call.
So basically, there's a misperception as to how this works. It isn't because the principals are the ones who are in charge of their own schools.
Yes.
And they're the ones who are in charge of the hiring, and they're the ones who make the decision with whatever board they happen to work with. They then turn it over to you. You make sure that that is a legal, legit hire, and that's how a person is hired. It has nothing to do with...
Principals do not make the official hire at the school level. They make the recommendation.
Okay, but they're the ones that make the recommendation, and
Yes.
you're the one that...
They screen the candidates, and the candidates' information is on the Apple Track system. They screen the candidates. They make the reference calls. Basically, my end is looking at salaries, making sure that they're licensed. The background checks also come in to me. I look at background checks. So all of that is done on my end.
Thank you, because I think that clarifies. I think there's been a huge misunderstanding as to how a person is hired.
Well, I will say this, until probably the last year and a half, we have had people told they were hired, and Mark had never heard of them.
So to that end, the principals will often call candidates after they make the recommendation and tell them that they are recommending them for the position. And if you really want to get technical, everything is contingent upon board approval.
I mean, yeah, but and let me just clarify, I'm not talking about principals doing this. We had central office staff doing this.
Oh, okay.
Well, we fixed that, so,
Yep, that's fixed.
okay. So does that answer your question? Okay.
Any other questions?
No, I appreciate you going over that, because that was something that I was curious about, and, I've been in HR before, but I didn't know how it was done on this level. So thank you. I think there's some misconceptions out there, as Martha was saying, that on how this is done. And so it was good to hear clarifying information, so. But you've got some exciting other news.
Yes.
As well.
Don't go far, Martha might have questions. All right, oh my goodness. There we go, that's a little better. I'm excited to come back to you kind of as part two. In November, December, we talked about recruitment and retention efforts in our district. And we started with that retention effort. As you know, the retention bonus was paid in two parts to our employees. Coming to talk about the recruitment component to that. And obviously, it's very timely, as Dr. Dickerson has discussed, both the need for staff and the recruitment fairs that are coming up, the job fair. This is a good time to share this. You do have a handout in your packet that outlines our framework for the recruitment incentive. We recognize that there is a continued job shortage locally, statewide, nationally, and we have a commitment to fully staff our schools for our children. And so partnering with our Human Resource Department, federal programs through our ESSER funding will be providing recruitment bonuses or incentives for employees that are hired during a certain window, with the target being we are fully staffed by August 29th of 2022. That is the first day of school. Those are for hard-to-fill positions, those hard-to-fill state-allotted positions specifically, especially exceptional children. We have already advertised that bonus, but now we have included that in this pool coming from our ESSER funding in our ESSER application. Also, certified positions are core classroom teachers, digital lead teachers, and then we have classified positions that have been hard to fill as well. And so all of those will start to roll out. We'll be able to advertise that heavily, and we do believe that will be an incredible recruitment incentive that will help turn that corner, and we can get some folks to Asheville City Schools. And it is an expensive place to live, and we hope that this recruitment incentive will yield good results.
Any questions for Sarah? Thank you all for putting this together. Yes, the recruitment incentive is definitely going to, hopefully, this will be helping. Come back up to the mic. How does this compare to other districts around us, just out of curiosity?
I mean, as with other incentives that we've offered, we feel the need to be very competitive and offer high when we have a high cost of living in this area. So I've not looked at every district across the state, but I do feel like it's competitive and a little above. Okay. We really are determined to be fully staffed for next year. This is important not only to our children and their families, but to all the other staff who've worked so hard, as we recognized earlier.
Has the state come out with any additional funds in helping with this across the, I know the feds with the ESSER funds is federal, but have there been any state funds or anything? Do we know?
There has not been any additional state funding.
Just curious, well, I was just curious. I just had to ask. So, okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for this.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for that? Okay. All right. That takes care of the information only and the other parts of our agenda. Can I have a motion to go into closed session pursuant to
General Statute 143-318.11A1 to discuss personnel matters that are protected by General Statute 115C 319 through 321, and under subsection A3 to discuss matters covered by the attorney-client privilege.
All right. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. We're good? All right, thank you. We are out of our closed session. We have some announcements and future meetings. As a reminder, our open enrollment for grades K through 12 runs from February 7th through March 14th. There will be a 2-hour delay for middle and high schools this coming Wednesday, March 9th. Our next regular scheduled board meeting will be Monday, March 14th at 5 p.m. here in the boardroom. Then we have another 2-hour delay for middle and high school on March 23rd. Early dismissal for staff development on Friday, March 25th. And then an optional teacher workday, no school for students on March 28th. Our next regularly scheduled work session will be on Monday, April 4th. And then our regular meeting will be on Monday, April 18th after spring break. So please be sure and check the calendar if you have any questions. If there is nothing else, can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?